Mike Radich here, and I'm now joined on the phone by Titan FC welterweight Bristol Marunde. Bristol, how are you?
Doing very good, man. I'm right in the middle of it right now, training for this fight, August 22nd, and I'm real excited. Training's going good so far, and it's time to relax tonight.
Now, we're going to get to that fight coming up on August 22nd in just a minute, but let's go back in time a little bit. Let's go back to right after The Ultimate Fighter, and then let's work our way to the present day. So, The Ultimate Fighter ends, and you are on season 16 of The Ultimate Fighter, but you don't make your debut in the UFC till The Ultimate Fighter 17 finale. During that time off, from when the show ended till you fought Clint Hester, what was the holdup? Why couldn't you get on the season 16 finale? And also, why were they kind of keeping you on ice and then said, hey, we got a fight for you, here you go? What happened there?
Right. It was actually pretty crushing to expect to fight in the finale, and then they didn't say anything to us, but the writing was on the wall because the fight card was almost full.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I was calling the other members of 16 season, and they haven't heard anything from the UFC. And so I was at a loss. I said, you know, what's the deal here? I expected to fight in the finale like every other season, but I don't see my name up there. They haven't called me, and they won't tell me any information. So basically what they did was, you're right, they kept us on ice, because they didn't want us to know that we weren't fighting because the show was still airing.
Right.
So we kind of found out last minute, oh, by the way, you're all cut from the UFC. You're actually not going to get a real shot. So I tracked Dana down and kind of cornered him and was like, hey, I'd like to fight. Just keep me in mind. Okay. And he said, okay, I'll put you in the UFC. And I didn't hear back for like 3 months, however long.
Right.
So then I just kind of gave up. I was like, all right, maybe this is just not meant to be. You know what I mean? I did what I could do, and I don't know what else to say. You know, the fiance wants me to quit, and, you know, not necessarily quit fighting, but just, well, that was your shot. You know, it was kind of the mentality in our house. And then I got a call, and then I hadn't really been training, you know, because I assumed I wasn't fighting. And then I get a call, do you want to fight next weekend in UFC? From Joe Silva. And I was like, God, man, I knew this was going to happen. I was like, I hadn't been training. I actually hurt my rib, so I was taking 2 weeks off. 3 weeks off, and he calls me. Of course, I'm not going to say no. Maybe I should have. Knowing the outcome, I probably would have said no. But like, just let me okay, I'll do it. I've never said no to. I fought Jacare on a week's notice. I can fight. The problem was too, I was expecting to fight at 70, and the fight was at 85. So whatever. I didn't have to cut any weight. I was already 188. So I took the fight and got my butt kicked because I was exhausted. But, you know, that's the fight world. That's the fight world. That's the position I put myself in by not winning the show.
I see. Now, I've always been curious, how did you get on The Ultimate Fighter? Because you mentioned that you fought Jacare, and that was under the Strikeforce banner. And at the time, the UFC owned Strikeforce, so I thought that, you know, maybe you had been planning going down to 170, so I thought that you would go down to 170 and still fight for Strikeforce because you did them, you know, for lack of a better term, a favor by taking the Jacare fight because, you know, he's a big name and they wanted him on that card, so I thought that maybe they were going to give you a fight at 70 in Strikeforce, but then all of a sudden we find out you're going to be on The Ultimate Fighter, so how did that all come together? Did Joe Silva or Sean Shelby or somebody say, "Hey, go on The Ultimate Fighter at 70"? Like, how did that all come together?
No. I wasn't even planning on fighting at 170.
Okay.
It just happened. It was a strange thing because they called me from The Ultimate Fighter and they said, "Oh, you're 85," and I said, "No, I can make 170."
Right.
not knowing that I really could. But I said that, and I figured that I'll make a way. I haven't been that light since high school, 10 years prior. But I didn't know I was going to be in the Ultimate Fighter actually till last minute, because they said, just be ready, just in case. And so I didn't know what that meant, but I was in Seattle working for the 2 or 3 months prior to the show, so I wasn't really in good shape. I was like, it's probably not going to happen. And then, like, 2 weeks before the Ultimate Fighter, they're like, okay, be ready to make weight on this date. Like, I'm in Seattle. I was like, okay, I'll fly back. Mm-hmm. So I flew back, and I still didn't expect it to happen, because they kind of keep you on ice. They don't really want you telling everybody, hey, they don't want you putting it out there online or
right.
Other places. And then I just showed up, and it all just happened, right off the bat. It was crazy.
Right. That's pretty risky, you going on the Ultimate Fighter, not fighting at the weight class that you signed up for, because we see it all the time. Guys go on the Ultimate Fighter at a weight class above the one they normally fight at. They might be a welterweight fighting on a middleweight season, but we really don't ever see a guy who doesn't fight at that weight class normally give it a shot on a high stakes show like that. That's that takes a lot of guts.
It was difficult having to make weight 3 times in like a month and a half. Mm-hmm. That was difficult, because I had to keep my weight down. I just hadn't been used to. I was used to eating to stay at 205 or 210. Then I suddenly had to start walking at like 188, 185. It was difficult, but I did it.
Right. Then after the Clint Hester fight, you fought at UFC 163. You fought on the undercard. You fought against Viscardi Andrade. The fight didn't go your way. You lost by TKO in the first round. What went wrong for you in that fight?
Got my ass kicked. That's what went wrong.
Right.
I'd never been out of the country, and it just seemed like everything was ready. Like, everything was perfect. I was in good shape. I was actually in excellent shape. I was ready to just throw down and show the UFC that I belong there. And I got an IV from a doctor there in Rio, and I got super sick. I got a terrible fever, and I was laid out. I had to go to the hospital actually after the fight. Mm-hmm. I probably should have went to the doctors and said something, but I thought I could just power through, and I figured I could beat this guy. Even sick, I figured I could beat him, but it just didn't happen, and it's just my fault. Bad decisions, man. Some of them have to do with fighting, others don't, but I went out and performed poorly and got beat up, and so I kind of really had to sit back and question myself, like, why am I doing this? I've gotten knocked out twice, 2 times in a row. I'm just not fighting to my ability, and fortunately for me, Robert Follis came to Vegas, and he's the head trainer now at Extreme Couture.
Right.
And he took me out to lunch and said, "Look, let's not throw in the towel. Let's hit this from a different angle. Quit trying to be someone else. Let's be you. You're blue collar. You're ugly. You don't need to be fighting on the outside. We need to be. Your style needs to be up close, in their face, a lot like Randy Couture style. Let's do that, and let's fight." And that's what I wanted to do. I enjoy fighting. This is what I like to do. I don't rely on fighting to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. I work full time. I work 50, 60 hours a week. But fighting is so important to me, and that's what we did. We did that same style, that training, and I submitted my last opponent in a minute and a half.
Right.
So it made a huge difference for me, and I'm ready to repeat that August 22nd and do it again and again and again.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, did it rub a little bit more salt into the wound, that run that you had in UFC/Strikeforce, considering how well you were doing before that? Like, before that, you had your best wins of your career. Arguably, you can make the case some of those were your best wins of your career. You had the superior cage combat middleweight title. You were looking great. You had a ton of momentum, and then to have that happen to you and have all this, kind of weird scenarios that you would step into, did that make the whole situation worse?
Yeah, so worse. Everything was good, and I felt like I was on my way to stardom. I was on my way to, for a better term, is, riches and fame in the sport of MMA, and that just didn't happen. And I'm okay with that now. It burned for a while because I couldn't figure it out. I thought I did everything correctly at the time I thought I hit the formula right, and things were just going to blow up, and it had the opposite effect. I self-destructed, and I hit rock bottom in the sport. But fortunately, I have such a good life and good people around me, and I've continued to make money and build a business. Mm-hmm. And fighting for me is become, I think, what it should have been all along. Is this something I do that I enjoy? And it doesn't need to be anything more than that. I'm good at it, and I can go win big fights. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. At what point in time were you closer to hanging up the gloves and walking away from the sport? Was it after The Ultimate Fighter, or was it after UFC 163 when the UFC cut you? What point in time were you closer to walking away from the sport?
After the Viscardi fight, for sure. It was kind of depressing coming back home because I was ready to throw in the towel. I'm like, okay, to my girlfriend Aubrey, like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to put you through this anymore. I'm sorry. It's frustrating because I'm a badass in the gym, and it's just not happening in the cage in front of the world, and that is frustrating. And I just didn't want to be the practice All-American. Mm-hmm. Right. They couldn't put it together in the big shows, and I was like, I'm done. You know what? I'm just gonna ride dirt bikes and I don't know, scuba dive or do something else extreme that can take my mind off of it. But I couldn't put it down, man. This is something I've done for so long and something I enjoy to do. I love being in the gym, love working hard, and the camaraderie that I have with the guys there. It's just something that I can't find elsewhere, and there's nothing that can hit your adrenaline like going to a fight and going to that cage and knowing that you've prepared and you have a shot to go out there and get your hand raised and get those feelings of conquering the world. And that's something I want to feel over and over, and I've worked hard for it, and I just don't want it to slip away. And I still think I have a lot in the tank.
Mm-hmm. What is it about Brazil that makes it so tough for Americans to pick up a win there? Because it seems like every guy who goes through the UFC and then ends up getting cut has a loss in Brazil on their record. It's crazy. I've interviewed 4 or 5 guys recently who have been recently cut from the UFC, and you look on their record and maybe it was their first fight or their last fight in the UFC, but they all have losses in Brazil. What is it about Brazil that makes it tough for an American to get a win?
Yeah, it's difficult for me. Especially, I've never really been out of the country. It was, the food was bad. I hated the food. It was just stressful being in a place where nobody spoke English, and I felt like it was kind of a hostile environment, and I think it's intimidating. There's kind of some kind of insecurity that comes with not knowing your surroundings and being unfamiliar with it. You would think that the cage is the cage no matter where. And for some guys, that's, I think, true. Some guys don't really care. They can perform anywhere. But, for me, personally, it was just difficult going to hostile territory like that and not having the right foods and, getting really sick from that crazy IV I got. So, all those factors, yeah, it's difficult.
Mm-hmm. That fight at UFC 163 took place in August of last year. What's the timeline from when that fight ends till you have this talk with Robert Follis? How much time passes before you sit down with him?
Yeah, it was like probably 3 months.
Mm-hmm. And you're back at Extreme.
So
okay, go ahead.
Training Couture. Yeah, I've been training Coutures since then. It's no more gym hopping, no more self-training. I'm go to Extreme Couture, and he coaches me, tells me what to do, and that's the way it should be. And I don't have to, stress about the fight as much, worry about, the situation. I know that I'm taken care of with my team, and that was important for me to have that kind of teamwork and a trainer that's been there and been to the big shows and he knows exactly what to say and how to motivate me. And so far it was awesome. My last fight, I felt great. I was so relaxed and, tore apart a guy that's pretty tough. He's 8-1. And we took him down and just tore him up fast. So,
Is Robert Follis the only reason why you're at Extreme Couture?
Yeah, that's definitely a true statement. Robert Follis has so much experience, and he runs a great practice, and that's why I'm there. He's built a great team, and now, all my teammates, we feel good together. We're winning, and it's fun to be part of a winning team like that.
It seems like Extreme Couture is close to being back, if not back already. I mean, there's a lot of great people training there now. There was a time where everyone was leaving, whether it's Randy Couture retired and then all the big names went to different camps, but it seems to be pretty good there now, right?
Yeah, it's true because Vegas has a lot of fighters, but it also has a lot of gyms. And, I think fighters really crave a team atmosphere, and that's what we get there. When I go there, I know I'm going to get good work, and for that practice, and it's at nighttime, which is good for me because I work all day. I remodel houses, and my fiance and I, we have a house flipping business. So I'm busy all day. I go to the gym, and I know I'm going to get my work, and it's going to be, I'm not going to get injured. We can work hard, but it's not a free-for-all like a lot of gyms.
I see. I was going to bring up your other job a little bit later, but since we're on the topic now, I saw some of your stuff on Facebook, the before and after pictures, and I got to say, you do a really good job.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's exciting. I'm getting more into it as time goes on. It's a messy job at times, and it's a lot of hard work. I go in there and do a lot of the physical work myself and tear down walls, and a lot of back-breaking work falls on me. And these houses we go into and we buy from auction, they're pretty bad. They're hoarders, and there's dead cats and syringes, and they're bad, man. But, I get in there, I just throw on a mask and get to work. So I get the job done, and it's pretty rewarding when the house sells and you make a good profit.
I see. So you flip the houses. Now, how long have you been doing this?
My first house was in 2009, and since then we just continue to build, pick up momentum, and essentially get. As longer I do this, the worse the house gets because the bigger the profit gets on that. So, I can, me and Aubrey, we're a deadly team. It's my fiance. She's great with design, and she's a real estate agent. So we're just excellent business partners.
Now, how's the market there?
The market in Vegas is great. It's not what it was. It's more difficult to find houses, but there's a lot of buyers, and in certain price ranges, there's not a whole lot on the market. So the houses that we put out are always highly upgraded, and they sell within a week.
Now, do you do remodel work? Like, obviously you just said that you flip houses, but is there ever a time where, somebody or maybe somebody who's heard of the work you've done hires you on? Do you do any of that? Yeah,
we do that a lot because friends and family, inevitably, something goes wrong, or if there's a flood or, anybody needs new carpet, of course, I'm always willing to help people out, and it's what we do every day. So, I like to keep people from having to pay the retail price for, work, because the contractors, they're expensive. You go out and just call some guy out of the newspaper, or online, you're going to pay through the nose for that product. You know, somebody, they're going to quote you 2-3 times what I can do it for.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, besides that, you also had another job not too long ago. You were a promoter. You promoted MMA events in the Pacific Northwest. Rain Promotions was the name of it. Is this still going on?
Yeah, I haven't given up on it. I've just been so busy with the house flipping business. But, you know, the fight promotions is such a great thing. I love bringing up young fighters and giving them a shot. I'm in a good position to be able to match make and put on fair fights. I've just seen so many promoters out there, just local guys. You know, so many fights are mismatched, and oftentimes the gym owner is the promoter, and his own guys are stacked against a group of street fighters. You know, just building his own guys. So, you know, I was happy to put on good, fair fights, and the fights are always the best because of that.
Mm-hmm. What I liked about your show was, you know, you train and live in a totally different part of the country. You don't really promote the guys that you know. You promote the guys from that area. So I like that. Yeah,
I'm completely neutral. Mm-hmm. So I just put on good fights and an entertaining event too. Being from Vegas, I pick up a lot from all the entertainment here, the lights and the smoke and all that. So, you know, I definitely want to continue that in the future.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, your last fight, you subbed Ian Williams by a Kimura in the first round. Then after that fight, you were scheduled to fight, I believe back in June, you were supposed to go up to Canada and fight at World Series of Fighting Canada 2 against Ryan Ford. He pulled out of the fight. What happened with World Series of Fighting? You know, obviously you're getting ready to fight for Titan. What happened with WSOF?
Yeah, that was frustrating. I was excited for that fight. Ryan Ford's a really athletic, good fighter. He's got a great record. I think he's 22-4, mm-hmm. something like that. And he's got a big mouth, you know. So this is most people know who he is. So that would have been a great win for me. That really would have put me back on the map. Unfortunately, he got injured. He hurt his shoulder, and there's nothing you can do. I know he didn't back out on purpose. He had to. You know, this is the second time we've been supposed to fight. So, you know, hopefully I can meet this guy someday. I really don't care where we meet, WSF or anywhere. It doesn't matter to me. So I was ready to fight, and that fell through, and a couple other fights fell through. So I'm excited to go to Titan, and they've been putting on great shows, and it's cool to be on TV, you know. And mm-hmm. I'm at the spot now in my fight career where, honestly, I don't care about the fans. I don't care. I don't fight for them. I'm doing this for me. I want to prove that I can fight ability, and I can go out and smash people, and that's all I really want to do. And if nobody knows or sees, that's fine. I don't care. I just want to fight. I'm not here to become rich and famous from fighting. I'm just here to do what I do best. Mm-hmm.
Just curious, have you been talking to John Alessio a lot? Because he told me that same exact statement like 3 years ago.
That's funny. No, we are friends.
Yeah, and, I know.
We do talk a lot, but no, I never knew that he said that same thing. But it doesn't surprise me. It sounds like something he'd say too.
Yeah, definitely. Now, where do you leave off with World Series of Fighting? Is that still a possibility? Are you exclusive with Titan now, and that's not possible? Like, what happened with them?
You know, I see Ray Sefo, the president for World Series of Fighting, in the gym
all the time,
almost every day, and you know, we talk and we have a good relationship. I think that, you know, that could be a possibility in the future. It just didn't happen. There's several opponents fell through, and you know, and he understands we're friends, and but right now I'm with Titan, and that's who I'm going to fight for, and that's who I'll promote, and that's all I'm really concerned with. So if they want to fight me in the future, and if Titan doesn't want to continue with me, that's fine. I really don't, honestly don't really care where I fight. I just want to stay busy and keep fighting.
Mm-hmm. Is making a return to the UFC, is that something that's motivating you at this stage in your career? Is this another factor, another motivating factor for you to continue on fighting, or does it really not matter to you if you fight in the UFC again?
Yeah, I don't really care. I went there, I fought in the UFC. The UFC is it's the biggest organization in the world. If I don't ever fight there, that's fine. Doesn't concern me. I just want to stay busy. That's the most important thing for me. I don't want to go 6-8 months without a fight. I'd like to get a big win streak in, and then see where it goes from there. If the UFC calls me, I'll go fight for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You started fighting professionally in 2005, and by 2013 you were fighting in the UFC. You had to fight 7 years and a stint on The Ultimate Fighter to make it into the UFC, but at the end of the day, you did make it there. You only had 2 fights in the UFC, the Hester and the Andrade fight, so only 2 fights in the UFC, and then you were back out on the regional circuit trying to continue your fighting career. So I'm just curious, what's harder? Is it harder to get to the UFC, or is it harder to stay in the UFC?
That's a good question. Burt Watson, the infamous backroom guy for the UFC, he says it's harder to stay there than it is to get there. And I think that could be true. I think it's, for each person it's different. But for me, I think it's the same. It's probably just as hard to get there nowadays as it is to stay there, because especially when you've already had taken losses and you've already had a kind of up and down career. You fought back in the day, like myself and John Alessio, and you would go to fights. I used to go to fights without a corner. I used to show up and just expect to win. Wasn't always the case, but just mismanagement of my fight career. So yeah, it's difficult to get to the UFC now. There's, I believe, 400 fighters signed to the UFC, and so there's a lot of people in line with better records and that are waiting to get fights. So yeah, it's difficult to get there, but especially if you have to travel and fight in Brazil, yeah, good luck.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, coming up on August 22nd, you're going to be taking on Micah Miller. Just curious, when he was the opponent that Titan offered you, were you surprised? I mean, I'm kind of surprised, but I knew he was kind of going up to 170. But from your point of view, were you surprised when he was the guy who was offered to you? Yeah,
they went through actually a couple opponents. First, I just said yes. I've never said no to a fight, so I just said find a guy that will fight me and sign a contract and send it to me, and I'll sign it. And so they went through some opponents, and finally Micah Miller was one that signed the contract. And I didn't really know much about him at the time, so I said, cool, I'll look him up. And then I see that he's quite a bit, has fought such a lighter weight than me, and okay, if he wants to fight me, that's his problem. So I'm sure, he's got experience and he knows what he's doing, and I'm sure he's relying on a submission or something else. He's probably not going to try to overpower me. I'm going to be much stronger and bigger than him. But everybody's susceptible to submissions, and I think that's what he's relying on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Where do you feel you have the advantage in this fight?
I think in the clinch, I'm going to be much stronger, so I can dictate where the fight happens.
Mm-hmm. I see.
If I want to stay on the feet, that's where it's going to be. If I want to push him against the cage, he can't stop me. I think his only chance for this fight is a submission.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, I know you just said that you don't really care what the fans think. You don't really care what people are going to say about your fights, but to the other fighters and maybe some promoters out there, what are you looking to showcase in this fight? What's something out there that you're like, you know what, I don't really care about what the fans think, but maybe to yourself, what do you have to prove on the 22nd?
What I really want to prove is, and it's not that I don't want to entertain people.
Right.
I want to be very entertaining, and I want people to want to watch me fight. But I'm not doing it for them, and I don't like it when fighters go out there and say that they fight for the fans and they love the fans and this and that. to me, that's kind of disingenuous. Everybody fights for themselves. They just want to say that I love the attention and the money that comes from it. That's one thing. But what I really want to show is just that I can fight to my ability, that I can be me, and just like that conversation that changed my fight path with Robert Fallis was that he said, know who you are as a fighter, and that made a big difference for me. And what that means practically is that I'm dirty. I'm an ugly fighter. Use wrestling, use the clinch game. It's not going to be fancy. I'm probably not going to get some amazing head knockout kick finish or spinning back fist. That's just not going to happen. It's going to be grind him on the cage and punch him out. And that's really all I want to show, is that I can be me and have fun doing it.
Mm-hmm. Just curious, how much have we seen from you? You know, how much higher is your ceiling than what you've been putting out as of late? You know, how much better can you be, and how much better could have you been in some of those losses?
Yeah, it's always tough to speculate what you could have done, but
right.
I think that I haven't fought with my strengths of wrestling and ground and pound for a long time, and I'm excited to get back to that. In the fights, I do it in practice every day, training at Extreme Couture with my teammates, and that's how I want to fight, and I think that's how I'm going to win. And I think I would have done a lot better, of understanding what I'm good at, and not just because you have weaknesses doesn't mean that you should spend most of your time on that. I think stick to your strengths, and when you have time, work on your weaknesses, and that's what I've been doing. And I'm excited to fight, and I'm really appreciate Titan bringing me on.
Mm-hmm. Bristol, real quick before I let you go, do you have any sponsors you'd like to thank, and is there anything you'd like to say to the fans? I'm walking out with no sponsors. That's just not important to me right now. I'm focused on me. I'm going to wear what I want to wear. I'm going to walk out focused on the fight and walk out with my trainer, and I'm going to have a blast doing it. And I want to thank my teammates at Extreme Couture, because they're the ones there every day that are pushing me and helping me be stronger and enjoy this whole process. And I want to thank Robert Fallis for keeping me in the sport and pushing me and challenging me to go out there and be me. And so look forward to that. On August 22nd, I'm going to come out and be the nastiest, ugliest fighter I can possibly be. Bristol, thank you for taking the time to talk. I really appreciate it. Good luck August 22nd at Titan FC 29 against Micah Miller.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.